Hey y'all, Coach Inthefight here. Got the whole family with me.
Hey y'all.
Hey, y'all.
And today is March the 20th, 2025. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the significance of the equinox. Alright, so one of the things we want to do, first of all, is we'll be looking at Genesis chapter 1. But in the video, we'll also be looking at Enoch, parallel translations of Enoch, so that we can get different viewpoints on the same scripture. The equinox, as we see, is March the 20th. That's why we're doing this video today. We kind of need to get it done quickly, as it will be high noon here at about, what time you got, Chris? 12:55 is what I got, according to timeanddate.com. High noon for our area is 12:55, and so that will be the time when we will mark the sundial, calibrate the sundial for the year. We have one that should be already in sync, and we can verify. We could have been verified it all day if it hadn't been a Sabbath day. I would have. But then the other one, we will take a scriptural lesson and calibrate the sundial according to what we'll learn in Enoch.
And we gonna build a tractor.
And we're going to be using the celestial clock calendar to help illustrate some of this. All right. Now, anybody got scripture and could read, or anybody want to come over here and read a translation from Genesis 1 and 14? Journey, you close enough. Genesis 1 and 14.
And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years."
Let's look at some of these other translations. Look at the Amplified Bible.
Then God said, "Let there be light bearers, sun, moon, stars, in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be useful for signs, tokens of God's provident care, and for marking seasons, days, and years."
Okay, so now that's primarily what we're talking about here. The sun, the moon, and the stars being used to mark the seasons, days, and the years. We want to talk specifically about the stars because that's what we're talking about when we talk about the equinox. This is the day when the sun and the stars are aligned such that the days and the nights are equal. That's why they call it the equinox. But now that's important when we get over here to the Book of Enoch, like what we read down here in chapter 71 of the Book of Enoch. Johnny, if you don't mind, would you read the Lawrence translation in the middle there?
The book of revolutions of the luminaries of heaven, according to their respective classes, their respective powers, their respective periods, their respective names, the places where they commenced their progress, and their respective months, which Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, explained to me, he who conducted them, the whole account of them, according to every year of the world forever, until a new work shall be effected, which will be eternal.
Okay, so now this is Enoch in the flesh, right? Because he's having to be taught by an angel, right? And so what he's being taught is what we learned over there in Genesis chapter 1 and 14, that the celestials are the markers for time. Mm-hmm. Now here we are in the book of the revolutions of the luminaries of heaven. This is a book within a book. It's about 4 or 5 chapters here in the first book of Enoch. But in this first chapter, chapter 71 in the Lawrence, chapter 72, if you go to one of the other translations, like the ones off to the side there. But in this chapter, what we'll learn is the significance of the equinox. It's going to describe in detail how the equinox is used to tell time. Okay, and like I said, we got to hurry because we got to go actually view this for ourselves. So if you would, Journey, would you pick up there? It's verse 2.
This is the first law of the luminaries. The sun and the light arrive at the gates of heaven, which are on the east, and on the west of it at the western gates of heaven.
Now here's the sun's role here. It's given in more detail in the second book of Enoch, Enoch the prophet. But here is basically telling us how the day works. The day ends when the sun sets. That's what it's saying there. The day resets at sunset. A whole nother day begins, but that day again ends at sunset. Once the sun goes down, the day is over.
Right.
Want to go to verse 3?
I behold the gates whence the sun goes forth, and the gates where the sun sets.
Yeah, so now these gates are described in this chapter. If we were to scroll down, and we're going to touch on some of these, but he talks about every one of these gates in detail. Let's see if we can stop on one here. He's talking about the 6th gate and the days in that particular gate. He knows how he talks about how the days get shorter and how many parts are in that. It's 10 parts versus
8 in the night.
But let's look at where it starts here.
In which gates also the moon rises and sets. And I behold the conductors of the stars among those who precede them. 6 gates were at the rising, and 6 at the setting of the sun.
All right, now, like I said, we're going to use the celestial clock calendar to illustrate this. But here we can see the gates that he's talking about. See these sections here? You have in the first gate, you have Kislev and Tibet. Those are 2 months on the Hebrew calendar, just like Heshwan and Shabbat. Well, Shabbat and Heshwan are in the same gates, whereas Kislev and Tibet are in a different gate. What is that? Gate 6? So that's gate 1, Chris?
Gate 1.
So Kislev and Tibet are in gate 1. Heshwan and Shabbat are in gate 2. Tishri and Adar are in gate 3. See that?
Right.
Whereas Nisan and Elul are in gate 4. Now it's particularly important where he talks about this gate 4 because you see it's surrounded by or is connected with the 364, which refers to the days of the sacred year. The moon also travels through these same gates is what he's talking about. They just do so more rapidly. But this is how we align with the stars. The moon is kind of like the red dot on the sight piece to help us to focus in on what particular star our planet is aligned with so that we can know what time it is. And we can see it here, understanding that we stand here where Enoch was describing it. This is why many people believe that the earth is flat and all of the planets, including the sun, are revolving around us. It's because Enoch wrote from the perspective of standing here in the middle of the earth. Enoch wasn't an astronaut, so he was looking from the ground up opposed to outer space down. So from his perspective, all of the planets, including the sun, are surrounding him or revolving around him. And it is this greenish ring here towards the middle that he's referring to is with respect to the gates. And according to verse 4, there are 6 gates. Each month or 2 months share a gate. But let's go on. Verse 5.
All these gates respectively, one after another, are on a level, and numerous windows are on the right and on the left sides of those gates.
Now, these numerous windows that he's talking about would actually get us closer to the middle of the celestial clock calendar because we're talking about the wandering stars, the planets,
Right.
which move a lot slower, which mark longer periods of time. But they too are in these gates. If we were to go look at where the wandering stars are right now, particularly like Uranus, it will be found in a particular gate at this time. For instance, let me show you where it's at. You have Uranus on this particular line. This is Rev 16 of the celestial clock calendar. We see that Uranus is over here in the constellation of the Twins or the Snake.
Right.
Well, one thing I'm noticing significant here, Chris, is how it's in this constellation each one of these significant times.
Right.
The time of the Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
Who?
Solomon.
Solomon and us.
Right.
We're gonna have to verify that and do a whole nother video. Anyway, let's go on.
First proceeds forth that great luminary, which is called the sun, the orb of which is as the orb of heaven, the whole of it being replete with splendid and flaming fire.
So, talking about the sun, it says its chariots where it ascends, the wind blows, the sun sets in heaven, and returning by the north, it proceeds towards the east, and is conducted so as to enter by the gate, and it illuminate the face of heaven. This is basically talking about how the sun rises. But look at verse 9.
In the same manner it goes forth in the first month by the great gate.
So here we're talking about the first month, and this is why we're doing this video, is because we want to understand completely why we know this is the first month. Here we are in March, and we're really only talking about the tropical months, right, Chris?
Right.
Right. We still have to wait for the representation of the moon, but that's covered in the next chapter. We really want to talk about the equinox here, but we're finding out, or what we're going to find out, is that the equinox is associated with the first month.
It goes forth through the fourth of those 6 gates, which are at the rising of the sun.
Okay, now this is a little tricky, and this is why we need a celestial clock calendar, because what we find, and when we're looking at here, with it being illustrated here, you have up at the top, you have gate 6, right, Chris?
Gate 1.
Gate 1 at the top. So, and gate 6 is at the bottom.
Right.
So right here in the middle are the great gates that he's talking about. If you look at them closer, they even look a little bigger. Look how thin this gate is right here.
Mm-hmm.
Look how this one is a little bit bigger. Look at how these two are actually really, really fat compared to the other two. That's why you call them the great gates.
Right.
The big gates. So let's go back to Enoch. It goes forth through the fourth of the 6 gates, which are at the rising of the sun. But now notice that in the previous verses describing the first month.
Right.
So he's saying that the first month, you understand, Journey? Stacy, everybody else keeping up? I know Chris know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he's saying that the year doesn't start up here. In January, which is the first gate. But he's saying that the year starts down here where it enters the 4th gate, where we see Nisan. That's the beginning of the tropical year. That's the beginning of the sun's year. Again, we have to wait for the representation of the moon, and then we can start the year. Start calculating when the feast days are.
Right.
All right, let's go a little more.
And in the 4th gate, through which the sun with the moon proceeds, in the first part of it, there are 12 open windows, from which issues out a flame when they are opened in their proper periods.
Yeah, so like we said, you have the representation of the moon, which is what this is saying. And in the 4th gate, through which the sun with the moon proceeds. So you have the sun in this gate here. And then once you have the moon's representation with it, then you could actually start the year. You have the sun, the moon, and the stars all aligning to start the year.
So we're in the 4th gate now?
We would enter it at high noon.
Yeah, in about 10 minutes, we enter the 4th gate.
One of the things that's helpful.
Hold on, Stacey.
Well, I was just going to say one of the things that's helpful is actually having the celestial clock in hand, where you can see it. I mean, you can download it on coachinthefight.shop, but actually having it in your hand so that you can identify with what you're saying makes it come to life even more.
So look for future videos on the subject. If you got anything out of this one, hit the like button. If you didn't, hit the dislike button, but leave us a comment either way, and shalom.
Shalom.
What training